Have you ever wondered why, even after years of trying to improve yourself, reading the books, following the habits, listening to the gurus, you still feel incomplete, as if a piece of you remains in the dark? Carl Jung believed that true growth is not about adding more light, but about confronting the darkness within. Individuation. Growth, as Jung called it, is not self-improvement in the modern sense. It is self-confrontation, a journey into the depths of the unconscious, a descent into the abyss of the soul, where your greatest fears hide alongside your greatest potential. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the essence of individuation, the process of uniting what you know about yourself with what you refuse to see. It is not comfortable, it is not glamorous, it is not even safe in the conventional sense, but it is necessary if you want to live as your true self, rather than as a hollow mask shaped by society. Most people live their entire lives trapped in what Jung called the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted by others. We become the obedient worker, the charming friend, the dutiful child, the respectable adult. But behind that mask lives the shadow, the rejected parts of ourselves we hide from the world, and often from ourselves. The anger we suppress, the envy we deny, the desires we forbid. And the longer we deny them, the more power they gain. Jung said that individuation requires us to look directly into the shadow, not to destroy it, but to integrate it, to recognize that wholeness means embracing the dark as much as the light. Imagine your life as a house. The persona is the decorated living room you show to guests, but the shadow is the basement, locked, dusty, filled with things you don't want to acknowledge. Individuation begins the moment you decide to walk down those stairs, to open the boxes you sealed long ago, and to claim the parts of yourself you abandoned. Because Jung understood, those abandoned parts are not just dangerous, they are powerful. And if you integrate them, they become the very fuel for your growth. But the shadow is only the beginning. Individuation also means facing the Anima and Animus, the inner feminine in men and the inner masculine in women. Jung believed that our unconscious carries the opposite gender within us, shaping how we love, how we create, how we dream. To ignore this inner counterpart is to remain incomplete. To embrace it is to gain balance, depth, and connection with the hidden layers of our psyche. The final stage of individuation is the encounter with the self, not the ego, not the persona, but the deeper center of the psyche, the totality of who we are. The self is the symbol of wholeness, often appearing in dreams as a wise old man, a divine child, or a mandala. It is the point where opposites unite, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. Individuation growth is the path toward this wholeness, the reconciliation of everything within you that has been split apart. But let us be clear, individuation is not a weekend self-help project. It is not about morning routines or productivity hacks. It is a lifelong confrontation with your psyche, a dialogue with your dreams, a struggle with your demons. Jung compared it to alchemy, turning lead into gold, chaos into meaning, darkness into consciousness. The alchemists believed the philosopher's stone could transform base metals into pure gold. Jung believed individuation could transform a fragmented soul into a whole being. Why does this matter today? Because modern culture sells us the illusion of improvement without transformation. We buy courses, apps, supplements, chasing an image of success. But deep inside, the unconscious remains untouched. We are like actors playing roles, hoping the applause will fill the emptiness. Jung's wisdom cuts through the illusion. Growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming who you truly are, and that requires pain, honesty, and the courage to descend into your own depths. Think about the last time you felt envy. Did you deny it, suppress it, pretend you were above it? Jung would say, that envy is part of your shadow. It is not to be destroyed, but to be understood. Maybe it reveals what you secretly desire. Maybe it shows you the unlived parts of your life. By bringing it into awareness, you do not let it control you in the dark. You transform it into a guide. That is individuation growth, not denial, but transformation. Or consider love. How many relationships collapse because people project their anima or animus onto their partners? We do not see the person. We see our unconscious image of what a lover should be. Jung explained that individuation requires withdrawing these projections, facing the inner figure directly, so we can finally love others as they are, not as mirrors of our unhealed psyche. Only then does love become authentic, not illusion. And then there are the dreams, the mysterious theater of the unconscious. Jung insisted that dreams are not random. They are messages, symbols from the self, guiding us on the path of individuation. A recurring dream of being chased? It might be your shadow demanding attention. A dream of uniting with a stranger? It could be your anima or animus calling for integration. Each dream, if taken seriously, becomes a step toward wholeness. But why does individuation feel so frightening? Because it demands that you abandon the comfort of the known. It demands that you let the persona crack, that you admit you are not the mask you wear. It demands that you walk into the chaos of the unconscious without knowing what you will find. Jung warned that the path is not for the faint-hearted. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Yet he also promised that on the other side of this pain lies freedom. Individuation. Growth is the only path that does not lead to imitation, but to authenticity. The world does not need another copy of someone else's success. The world needs you to become whole, to embody the self that only you can bring into existence. So, what is individuation growth? It is the heroic journey into yourself. It is the confrontation with shadow, the embrace of the anima, animus, the discovery of the self. It is the transformation of unconscious fate into conscious freedom. It is Jung's answer to the emptiness of modern life, a roadmap for those who dare to be whole. And the question remains, will you choose the mask, the comfort, the safety of the persona, or will you choose the descent, the pain, the darkness, in order to become truly alive? Most people believe they are free. They wake up, they go to work. They choose their clothes, their food, their careers. But Carl Jung would say, they are not free at all. They are trapped not by chains, but by their own unconscious. They live inside what Jung called the persona, the mask crafted to satisfy society, family, and culture. And because they mistake this mask for their true self, they never take the journey of individuation. They never become whole. They never meet the self. Why do most people fail to individuate? Because individuation is not comfortable. It is the opposite of comfort. It asks you to peel away the mask you have worn for decades. It asks you to face the shadow, the ugly, shameful, dangerous parts of yourself you tried to bury. It asks you to question the very foundations of who you think you are. And humans, by nature, avoid pain. We escape into distractions, work, relationships, entertainment, endless noise, anything to avoid silence, because in silence, the shadow speaks. Jung believed that the majority of humanity prefers the illusion of wholeness over the reality of transformation. They prefer to look good in the eyes of others, rather than to confront the chaos inside. That is why the persona is so seductive. Society rewards the persona. You get praise for being polite, promotions for being obedient, love for being agreeable. But all the while, the unconscious grows restless. The shadow waits. The unlived life gnaws at the edges, and the soul whispers in dreams. Think about how often people collapse in midlife. At 40, 50, after decades of chasing success, they suddenly break. They feel empty, lost, consumed by depression or anxiety. Jung said, this is not random. It is the unconscious rebelling, the self demanding attention, the shadow breaking through the cracks of the persona. This is why Jung insisted that individuation is not optional. If you do not take the journey consciously, life will drag you into it by force. But why do so few succeed? Because individuation requires courage most people do not cultivate. It is easier to scroll, to binge, to drown in stimulation, than to sit with the silence of your own psyche. It is easier to cling to identity, your job title, your social roles, your political beliefs, than to admit they are just masks. It is easier to project your shadow onto others, to blame the world, to see evil out there, than to admit it lives inside you. Jung observed this everywhere. People fight wars outside to avoid the war within. They demonize others because they cannot face the demons in themselves. And as long as they remain blind to this truth, they are condemned to repeat patterns, to live as puppets of the unconscious. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is why most people never individuate. They prefer to call it fate rather than take responsibility for their psyche. There is also the fear of destruction. Individuation feels like death to the ego. Imagine realizing that the identity you built for 30 years, the career, the reputation, the beliefs, was just a persona. People fear losing themselves, not realizing that what they will lose is only the mask. Beneath it, the self waits. But to find it, they must let the old identity collapse. And collapse feels like death. That is why Jung compared individuation to alchemy. The old form must dissolve before a new one can emerge. And then, there is society itself. Our culture is built on conformity. From childhood, we are told who to be. Be nice, be successful, be efficient, be desirable, but do not be too strange, too intense, too different. Individuation, however, demands difference. It demands authenticity. It demands that you risk being misunderstood, even rejected. And most people would rather belong to the herd than walk the lonely path of the self. Nietzsche called this the tragedy of the herd instinct. People sacrifice greatness for comfort. Jung saw the same dynamic in the psyche. Consider relationships. Many couples unconsciously project their anima or animus onto each other, mistaking illusion for love. They never individuate because they never withdraw those projections, never see their partner as they truly are. They prefer fantasy to reality. To individuate in love would mean to own your projections, to face your inner feminine or masculine, and to love the other as a free soul. But this is terrifying, so most never attempt it. And then there is the ultimate obstacle, fear of the shadow. The shadow is not just anger or envy. It is also hidden strength, creativity, desire, potential. But because it also contains what we fear most, we avoid it entirely. We think ignoring it keeps us safe. But Jung warned, what you ignore controls you. What you repress becomes your master. And so, people remain slaves to the shadow while believing they are free. Why do most people never individuate? Because they do not want to pay the price. The price is pain, the price is solitude, the price is the collapse of false identities. The price is confronting your shadow, integrating your anima, and surrendering the persona. But the reward is wholeness. The reward is freedom. The reward is to no longer be a puppet of fate, but a creator of meaning. In the end, individuation is not for everyone. Jung himself admitted, only a few will ever take the path. Most will remain fragments, masks, roles, and perhaps that is their destiny. But for those who feel the restlessness, the emptiness, the call of the unconscious, individuation is not just an option, it is the only path forward. So, ask yourself, are you living as the mask, or are you ready to tear it apart and face what lies beneath? We live in an age obsessed with self-improvement, morning routines, productivity hacks, dopamine detox, the endless chase for optimization. But Carl Jung would warn, all this may look like growth, yet it may only be polishing the mask, the persona, while the true self rots in the dark. Jung made a radical distinction. Self-improvement is about adaptation, but individuation is about transformation. One keeps you comfortable, the other tears you apart and rebuilds you whole. Self-improvement asks, how can I perform better in society? Individuation asks, who am I, beyond society's expectations? Self-improvement polishes the image. Individuation dismantles it. Self-improvement helps you fit in. Individuation demands that you break away. This is why Jung's concept still feels dangerous today. It threatens the entire self-help industry that profits from keeping people addicted to external improvement while avoiding internal confrontation. Think about it. Self-improvement tells you to wake up at 5 a.m. and meditate, to journal, to hustle, to eat clean. These are not bad in themselves, but Jung would ask, why are you doing it? If the answer is, to become more productive, more admired, more successful, then you are only strengthening the persona. You are feeding the mask. You are becoming more efficient at pretending. Individuation, on the other hand, is brutally honest. It demands that you face your shadow, the envy, rage, lust, fear, that no habit tracker will reveal. It forces you to acknowledge your anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine, that no productivity system will balance. It requires you to listen to your dreams, the cryptic language of your unconscious, that no coach or influencer can decode for you. Individuation is not about performance. It is about wholeness. Jung warned that self-improvement can become a dangerous distraction. He wrote, "The greatest danger in attempting to become good is the tendency to become counterfeit. You appear disciplined, strong, enlightened, but it is a hollow performance. The shadow grows in silence, and one day, it erupts." This is why so many people who master self-improvement still feel empty, still collapse in crisis, still fall into addictions, affairs, breakdowns. They improve the mask, but never face the soul. Self-improvement seeks comfort. Individuation thrives in discomfort. Self-improvement seeks applause. Individuation requires solitude. Self-improvement chases goals. Individuation confronts meaning. And this is why most people choose self-improvement. They fear the abyss of individuation. But Jung knew, only the abyss can transform you. Consider the phenomenon of burnout. Self-improvement tells you, rest, reset, come back stronger. Individuation whispers, maybe your entire life structure is a lie. Maybe the path you built was never yours. Maybe your burnout is not a failure. It is the unconscious rejecting the persona. Only individuation can hear that whisper. Self-improvement will silence it with another hack, another routine, another mask. And then there is love. Self-improvement says, become more attractive, more confident, more desirable. But individuation says, confront your anima and animus. Stop projecting illusions on your partners. Stop expecting them to complete the broken parts of you. Instead, integrate those parts within so you can love authentically. This is why Jung saw individuation as essential not just for the self, but for relationships, for society itself. Without it, we live in fantasies, never in reality. Even dreams reveal the difference. Self-improvement dismisses dreams as noise. Individuation treats them as sacred messages from the self. Jung insisted that dreams are the psyche's natural attempt to balance us, to guide us, to integrate the unconscious. A nightmare of falling is not just fear, it is the shadow asking to be seen. A dream of uniting with a stranger is not just fantasy, it is your anima or animus calling. Self-improvement cannot touch this realm. Individuation lives in it. So the question is not, should you improve yourself or should you individuate? Improvement can serve as a tool, but only if it serves individuation. Wake up early, not to be admired, but to face the silence of your psyche. Exercise, not to sculpt an image, but to embody strength as part of the self. Journal, not to appear disciplined, but to dialogue with the unconscious. Improvement without individuation is vanity. Improvement through individuation is transformation. Jung's wisdom is clear. If you chase self-improvement without individuation, you will climb a ladder that leads nowhere. You will polish a mask that will eventually crack. But if you dare to individuate, improvement will follow naturally, not as performance, but as authenticity. You will not just become better, you will become whole. So ask yourself tonight, are you improving the mask, or are you transforming the soul? CarlJung believed that the human soul moves through hidden stages of transformation. He called this process individuation, the path of becoming whole. But unlike modern self-improvement, this is not a straight line. It is a descent into the dark, an encounter with forgotten forces, and only then, a return to light. Jung mapped this journey into 4 great stages: the shadow, the anima, animus, the self, and finally, wholeness. Stage 1, the confrontation with the shadow. This is where it begins, the most terrifying and the most essential. The shadow is everything you reject about yourself. The anger you suppress, the envy you deny, the weakness you despise, but also the creativity, the desire, the strength you abandon. Jung warned that what we refuse to face does not disappear. It hides in the unconscious and controls us from there. This is why so many people live lives of repeated patterns, drawn to the same failures, the same conflicts, the same mistakes. The shadow directs them like a puppet master. Individuation begins when you turn around and face the puppet master. You do not destroy the shadow, you integrate it. You learn to say, "This too is me." Only then does the shadow become an ally instead of an enemy. Stage 2. The encounter with the Anima or Animus. Jung saw that within every man lives the Anima, the inner feminine, the source of feeling, intuition, imagination. Within every woman lives the Animus, the inner masculine, the source of strength, logos, structure. Most people project these inner figures onto others. Men chase women who carry their anima. Women chase men who embody their animus. But this creates illusions, fantasies, endless disappointment. Jung said, individuation demands that you withdraw the projection, that you recognize the anima or animus as part of yourself. This is not easy. It feels like tearing away the fantasy of love to face a deeper truth. You must first marry the inner opposite before you can truly unite with another. Stage 3. The emergence of the self. The self is not the ego. The ego is the center of consciousness, but the self is the center of the entire psyche. Conscious and unconscious together. It is larger than the ego, deeper than the persona, more ancient than the roles we play. In dreams, it appears as a wise old man, a divine child, a mandala, a symbol of unity. To encounter the self is to realize that you are not just a mask, not just an ego striving for success, but a totality that holds contradictions together. Jung said that the self is both the goal and the guide of individuation. It calls you through dreams, synchronicities, crises. It pulls you toward wholeness, even when your ego resists. Stage 4. Wholeness. This is the rarest and most mysterious stage, the union of opposites, light and dark, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, life and death. In this stage, you no longer live as a fragmented being, at war with yourself. You become whole, not perfect, not flawless, but integrated. Jung insisted that wholeness is not about eliminating flaws, but about embracing them as part of the self. This is why individuation is not sainthood. It is authenticity. The person who individuates is not someone without shadow, but someone who owns it, who transforms it into strength, who lives in truth rather than illusion. But do not mistake this as an easy path. Each stage feels like death. Facing the shadow threatens the ego. Encountering the anima or animus destroys fantasies of love. Meeting the self humbles the ego's arrogance. Reaching wholeness shatters the comfort of living fragmented. This is why most people never move beyond stage 1. They glimpse the shadow and run. They cling to persona. They drown in distractions. And so, they never individuate. Yet for those who endure, the reward is extraordinary. Jung believed individuation is the only true path to meaning in modern life. Without it, we are condemned to live as masks, chasing illusions, repeating unconscious patterns. With it, we gain freedom, not freedom from pain, but freedom to face it, to transform it, to live as ourselves. Think about it. In your life right now, which stage are you in? Do you still hide from your shadow, pretending it doesn't exist? Are you caught in projections, expecting others to complete you? Have you heard the call of the self in dreams, synchronicities, crises? Or have you begun to taste wholeness, the strange peace of embracing your contradictions? The journey of individuation is not linear. You may return to the shadow many times. You may struggle with the anima for years. You may encounter the self in glimpses, only to lose it again. But each encounter leaves a mark. Each step deepens you. Each struggle shapes you into something more real. Jung once wrote, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain." These 4 stages are the labor pains of the soul, the death of illusion, and the birth of wholeness. And if you have the courage to walk them, you will discover that growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming who you have always been. So remember the map: the shadow, the anima, animus, the self, and wholeness. This is the architecture of individuation. This is Jung's gift to us, a roadmap to the depths, but the map alone will not save you. You must walk the path yourself. And the question remains, do you have the courage to take the first step? Carl Jung believed that individuation is not something you choose casually, like a new habit or a new routine. It is something that chooses you. It begins when life cracks open the persona you have spent years building, when the unconscious pushes through the walls you've built around it. Most people never recognize these signs. They call them depression, anxiety, crisis, bad luck. But Jung saw them differently. He saw them as the whispers of the self, signals that you were being called to individuation. So, what are the signs? How do you know you are on the path of individuation? First, the collapse of certainty. You begin to notice that the beliefs, roles, and goals that once defined you no longer fit. The career you chased feels meaningless. The relationships you built feel hollow. The success you once craved leaves you empty. This is not laziness or failure. It is the persona cracking. Jung said that individuation often begins with crisis, when the mask can no longer contain the truth of the soul. If you feel lost, it may not be the end of your life story. It may be the beginning of individuation. Second, the confrontation with the shadow. You start to notice emotions you used to suppress. Anger, envy, resentment, fear, rising uncontrollably. Or perhaps hidden desires, creative impulses, even visions begin to surface. This can be terrifying. You may feel like you're becoming someone darker, more dangerous, but Jung would tell you, the shadow is surfacing because it wants to be integrated. If the monsters inside you are louder than ever, it may not be a breakdown. It may be individuation breaking through. Third, recurring dreams and symbols. Jung insisted that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. If you are being called to individuation, your dreams change. They become vivid, symbolic, repetitive. You may dream of being chased, of descending into caves, of fighting with animals, of meeting strangers. Jung said these are not random. They are messages from the self, guiding you deeper. If you take them seriously, they become a map. If you ignore them, they will return, stronger, darker, until you listen. Fourth, the withdrawal of projections. In relationships, you start to notice a strange shift. The person you loved passionately begins to look ordinary. The enemy you hated begins to look human. Jung explained, this is the withdrawal of projections. You no longer see your anima or animus in another person. You begin to see them as they truly are. This is painful because the illusion of love or hate dissolves. But it is also liberating because you finally take ownership of the inner figures within yourself. This is individuation transforming your relationships. Fifth, synchronicities. Jung coined this word to describe meaningful coincidences, moments when the outer world mirrors the inner world. A song that plays exactly when you think of a lost loved one. A stranger saying the exact words you needed to hear. A symbol repeating itself everywhere you look. These are not accidents. They are the language of the self, the unconscious breaking into the conscious world. If you are surrounded by synchronicities, Jung would say you are being called to walk the path. Sixth, an increasing sense of solitude. Individuation often isolates you. As you shed the persona, the old roles and relationships no longer fit. Friends may drift away, family may not understand, society may call you strange, you may feel lonely. But Jung would remind you, solitude is not emptiness. It is the necessary space for the self to emerge. If you feel pulled away from the herd, it may not be rejection, it may be initiation. Seventh, the search for meaning beyond success. You begin to realize that money, status, and pleasure cannot fill the void. You seek meaning, depth, truth. You turn to philosophy, psychology, spirituality. You read Jung, Nietzsche, ancient texts. You begin to hunger for something eternal. This hunger is the call of individuation, the self asking you to abandon shallow victories and pursue wholeness. But let us be clear, these signs are not glamorous. They feel like suffering, loss, confusion. They may look like breakdowns to the outside world. Jung understood this deeply. He said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Pain is not the enemy. It is the midwife of individuation." So, if you find yourself in crisis, overwhelmed by shadows, haunted by dreams, drawn into solitude, hungry for meaning, surrounded by synchronicities, do not assume you are broken. Consider that you may be on the path of individuation. The path is long, it is dangerous. It will strip away illusions and burn away masks. But on the other side lies authenticity, freedom, and wholeness. Few walk it. Most run back to comfort. The choice is yours. So ask yourself, are these signs haunting you? If so, maybe it is not madness. Maybe it is Jung's wisdom calling you home. In today's culture, growth has become an obsession. Everywhere you look, you see the slogans: never stop improving, crush your goals, level up every day. But Carl Jung would issue a chilling warning: growth that is forced, growth that ignores the unconscious, can destroy you. He knew that individuation is not a race, not a performance, not something you can hack. It is an organic process, as natural and dangerous as the growth of a tree. And just as you cannot pull a tree upward by its branches to make it grow faster without killing it, you cannot force individuation without tearing your psyche apart. Why is forced growth dangerous? Because the unconscious has its own rhythm, its own intelligence. Jung compared it to alchemy, a slow transformation of base matter into gold. If you heat the vessel too quickly, it explodes. If you push the psyche too hard, the shadow retaliates. The repressed returns with vengeance. This is why people who chase enlightenment too aggressively often fall into breakdowns, addictions, or psychosis. The psyche punishes violence against its natural pace. Consider modern self-help culture. It tells you, meditate for 12 hours a day, fast for a week, confront all your fears at once, push yourself until you break. But Jung would say, this is not individuation, this is inflation. Inflation is when the ego believes it can dominate the unconscious, when it tries to play God. And inflation always ends in collapse. The ego swells with light, but the shadow grows darker in secret, waiting for the moment to strike. Jung observed this in many of his patients. Some tried to become perfect overnight, adopting spiritual practices, rejecting all desires, chasing ideals of purity. But the more they forced themselves into the light, the more their repressed desires twisted in the dark. Eventually, they erupted, sometimes in violence, sometimes in obsession, sometimes in illness. Jung warned, you do not become whole by pretending to be pure. You become whole by embracing opposites, light and dark, love and hate, strength and weakness, step by step, at the pace your soul can bear. This is why Jung distrusted sudden enlightenment experiences. He knew they could be dangerous illusions. A person touches the unconscious, feels divine, believes they are special, chosen, above humanity. But this is the ego in disguise. Jung called it ego inflation through archetypal possession. Instead of integrating the unconscious, they are consumed by it. Instead of individuation, they fall into madness. True growth, Jung insisted, is humble. It is slow. It is painful. It is not fireworks. It is fire. It burns gradually, refining you over years. Forced growth skips the fire and seeks shortcuts. But shortcuts in the psyche are traps. They leave you shattered, not whole. Think of the shadow. If you try to integrate all of it at once, you drown. The anger, envy, fear, desire, they overwhelm the ego and you collapse. Jung advised gradual confrontation. Journal one emotion, face one projection, explore one dream at a time. Individuation is not conquered in a weekend retreat. It is lived through decades of courage. Or think of the Anima and Animus. If you force these archetypes, you project wildly. You see every woman as a goddess, every man as a savior. You confuse illusion with reality. Jung said, only when you withdraw projections slowly, carefully, do you integrate the inner opposite. Forced withdrawal destroys relationships. Gradual integration saves them. And then there are synchronicities. Many people chase them, obsess over them, build their lives around every coincidence. But Jung warned, synchronicities are signs, not orders. If you inflate them, you become paranoid, believing the universe micromanages your every step. The truth is subtler. Synchronicities invite awareness, not obsession. So, what did Jung recommend? Patience. He said individuation must unfold like a dialogue, not a conquest. The unconscious speaks in symbols, dreams, moods, projections. You listen, respond, reflect. Slowly over years, a relationship forms between ego and self. This is the rhythm of growth. If you force it, you break the dialogue. If you respect it, you evolve. Jung once wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain, but he also meant, there is no coming to consciousness without time. Pain is the fire, time is the vessel. Together, they forge wholeness. Separate them, and you create only destruction. So, beware of forced growth. Beware of chasing individuation like a trophy. Beware of treating your soul like a project. Jung would say, the psyche cannot be tricked, cannot be rushed, cannot be bullied. It can only be honored. The world will always tell you, grow faster, achieve more, transform now. But Jung whispers from the shadows, grow slower, go deeper, endure longer. Because real growth is not speed, it is depth, not expansion, it is integration. Not the ego's victory, but the self's emergence. So ask yourself, are you forcing growth to look powerful, or are you surrendering to the slow fire of individuation? One path leads to collapse, the other leads to wholeness. The choice is yours. Carl Jung described individuation as the most important journey of a human life. But he also warned, it is not simple, not quick, not safe. It is not a checklist you can complete in 30 days. It is a dialogue with the unconscious, a slow confrontation with forces older than your ego, and a path that will take decades, maybe your entire life. Yet the question remains, if individuation is the path to wholeness, how do you begin? The first step is not glamorous, it is honesty. Brutal, terrifying honesty with yourself. Jung insisted that most people prefer lies. Lies to themselves, lies to others, lies that keep the persona intact. But individuation begins when you dare to look in the mirror and admit, I am not whole. I am not who I pretend to be. The moment you stop performing for the world and begin confronting the truth, you have already taken your first step. Second, shadow work. Jung coined the term shadow to describe the hidden, rejected parts of yourself. To begin individuation, you must face them. Not all at once, that would drown you, but little by little. Ask yourself, what qualities in others make me angry? Often these are qualities of your own shadow, projected outward. Write them down, journal about them, accept that they exist in you. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the foundation of individuation. Third, listen to your dreams. Jung called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. They are not random noise. They are messages from the self, symbols that reveal what your conscious mind refuses to see. Keep a dream journal. Write down images, feelings, patterns. Over time, you will notice symbols repeating. Animals, strangers, places. Do not dismiss them. They are the language of the unconscious, guiding you deeper into individuation. Fourth, withdraw projections. Jung taught that much of what we see in others is really our own unconscious projected outward. The hero we worship, the villain we hate, the lover we idealize, all of these are mirrors. To begin individuation, you must slowly withdraw these projections. Instead of asking, why is this person like this? Ask, why do I see them this way? What part of me is reflected here? This is painful because it destroys illusions, but it also liberates you from living in fantasy. Fifth, embrace solitude. Jung warned that individuation often isolates you. As you shed the persona, old friendships may fall away. Family may not understand. Society may label you strange. But solitude is not punishment. It is the crucible in which the self is forged. Use solitude to reflect, to journal, to dream, to face the silence. In silence, the unconscious speaks. Sixth, study the symbols. Jung believed that myths, religions, and archetypes are not dead relics. They are living symbols of the collective unconscious. Read mythology, explore ancient stories. Notice how they appear in your dreams, in your struggles, in your relationships. Individuation is not just personal, it is also collective. By engaging with symbols, you tap into the wisdom of humanity itself. Seventh, patience. Jung emphasized this again and again. Individuation is not a quick transformation. It is not something you can force. It unfolds at the pace your psyche can endure. Some seasons will feel stagnant, others will feel like chaos. Sometimes you will regress, return to the shadow, struggle with the anima again and again. Do not despair. This is the rhythm of growth. Jung compared it to alchemy, slow, fiery, mysterious. Trust the process. So, how do you begin individuation growth? Not by chasing perfection, not by polishing the persona, not by denying the shadow. You begin by listening to your dreams, your emotions, your projections, your silence. And you begin by daring to be honest, by writing, reflecting, and accepting the parts of yourself you once rejected. Remember, individuation is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming yourself, your whole self, the totality of light and dark, conscious and unconscious. Jung gave us the roadmap, but only you can walk the path. So tonight, when you close your eyes, ask yourself, what part of me have I abandoned? What message is my unconscious trying to send? And then listen, because that is where individuation begins.